What if the person you believed was your mother wasn't? What if the life you thought was yours was someone else's story all along? Imagine discovering, years later, that your real mother has been trying to reach you, struggling in silence, while the world watches a manufactured narrative unfold. This is not a plot from a drama series. This is the shocking reality at the center of one of the most talked-about royal stories in recent memory. A story involving Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, and a young girl the public knows as Lillibet. A story where love, betrayal, money, and secrecy collide in ways few could have imagined. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For years, the world has followed the Sussexes with fascination. Meghan and Harry stepped away from royal duties, claiming freedom, privacy, and autonomy. They sought to create a new life outside the rigid rules of Buckingham Palace. The headlines chronicled every move: their interviews, public appearances, Netflix deals, and the drama of their departure from official royal duties. But lurking beneath the glamorous photos and carefully crafted public statements was a story no one could have anticipated, a story that remained hidden until now. This story begins not with the palace, not with Meghan, not with Harry, but with a mother who claims she has been silenced for too long. A woman who says she doesn't want your money, she doesn't care about fame, but she does want what matters most: her daughter. The woman claims her daughter, Lillibet, is caught in a whirlwind of wealth, public fascination, and complex legal maneuvers that threaten her very identity. She says enough is enough, and now she is speaking. What she reveals will shock even the most loyal royal followers. Why does this matter now? Because the timing is explosive. The public has been fed carefully curated images of a happy family living freely away from the monarchy. But what happens when the images are false, when the story you've believed is only part of the truth? What happens when someone steps forward to reveal the hidden chapters? Chapters filled with heartache, confrontation, and questions that go beyond money and titles. Suddenly, the drama of the Sussexes is no longer about celebrity status. It is about human lives, rights, and emotions caught in a storm that seems unstoppable. In the first few weeks of this story breaking, the internet has erupted. Social media exploded with speculation. Some viewers express anger, others confusion, and some deep empathy for a mother trying to claim her place in her child's life. Comment sections fill with debates. Was Meghan right? Did she act in her daughter's best interest? Or did she overstep boundaries that should never be crossed? Every theory, rumor, and viral clip adds fuel to the fire, creating a perfect storm of curiosity and tension. And in the midst of it all, Lilibet's real mother remains resolute. She refuses to be bought, she refuses to be silenced, and she is demanding answers and a reunion with her daughter. The situation is complicated. It involves international custody laws, media scrutiny, palace protocol, and public opinion that can swing wildly in hours. It's about family secrets that may have been hidden for decades. It's about money, privilege, and power. But at its core, it is about one simple, human desire: the desire of a mother to be with her child. That desire, timeless and universal, now faces obstacles so convoluted that even seasoned royal experts are struggling to predict the outcome. Imagine sitting in a room, hearing a mother speak about the years she spent watching her daughter from afar, trying to find the right moment to step in, only to be blocked, misrepresented, or misunderstood at every turn. Imagine the emotional weight, the frustration, the heartbreak. And then imagine the added layer of public scrutiny. Every claim she makes is dissected by journalists, royal commentators, and an audience hungry for scandal. Every move she makes is scrutinized, every word judged. In this world, truth is often stranger than fiction. But what did Lilibet's mother say that has everyone talking? She spoke in a calm, deliberate voice, yet every word carried weight. She claimed she was not motivated by money, fame, or revenge. Instead, she demanded recognition, acknowledgement, and access to her daughter. Her words were simple, yet they carried a gravity that reverberated across headlines. "I just want my daughter back. I don't want your money. I just want to be her mother." The directness of her statement stunned the public and ignited an international conversation. Suddenly, A story that seemed like royal intrigue transformed into a deeply human narrative of love, loss, and determination. At the same time, Meghan Markle is facing intense scrutiny. Accusations, speculation, and debates swirl around her choices. Did she know about these claims? Did she act to prevent contact between mother and daughter? Or is this narrative exaggerated by media sensationalism? Questions like these are almost impossible to answer definitively, yet the public cannot help but analyze every past decision, every interview, and every subtle gesture for hidden meaning. Each small detail is dissected, each moment magnified, as viewers try to connect the dots. And there are contradictions, too. Some sources close to the Sussexes insist that everything Meghan did was in Lilibet's best interest. Others, closer to the mother, suggest a pattern of obstruction and deliberate isolation. The conflicting stories only make the truth more tantalizing. Which version is real? Which is manipulation? Which represents the heart of the matter? Every time we think we have an answer, another revelation emerges, forcing the audience to question everything they thought they knew. Consider the stakes. Lilibet is still a child, growing up in a world of public attention and familial complexity. She is navigating fame she did not choose, scrutiny she cannot escape, and relationships that are layered with tension and secrecy. Her mother, on the other hand, is fighting for recognition and access, knowing that the public eye can be both an ally and an adversary. And Meghan, caught in the crossfire, must balance personal desire, public expectation, and familial obligation. Every decision ripples outward, affecting not only the individuals directly involved, but also the wider perception of the monarchy, celebrity, and modern parenthood. It's a story full of tension, drama, and raw emotion. And yet, it is only beginning. What comes next will challenge assumptions, defy expectations, and keep viewers on the edge of their seats. The real revelations are just beyond the horizon, waiting to be uncovered. The story of Lilibet, her mother, and Meghan Markle is far from complete, and the next chapter promises to shake the foundations of everything the public thought they understood about family, power, and identity. But before we can dive into the explosive details of what Lilibet's mother revealed, we need to rewind the clock. To understand why this moment matters, we must explore the events that led to her decision to speak out. The drama didn't appear overnight. It was years in the making. Years of silence, observation, and careful calculation. Every subtle move, every decision, every public appearance laid the groundwork for the confrontation the world is now witnessing. What drove a mother to break her silence after so long? And what secrets does she hold that could change the narrative forever? The answers are startling. They involve hidden correspondence, secret meetings, financial negotiations, and moments that seemed insignificant at the time, but now are critical to understanding the full story. They also involve ethical questions. What is the right way to raise a child? How much does public perception matter? And when does loyalty to family collide with loyalty to self? These questions haunt every page of this story, ensuring that even as one revelation is made, the audience cannot help but anticipate the next twist, the next secret, the next bombshell that might drop. As the mother speaks, the world is watching. And as Meghan responds, through silence, statements, or public appearances, the tension escalates. Viewers are left with the central question: whose version of the story is true? And more importantly, what will happen to Lilibet, caught in the middle of a clash of emotions, power, and public scrutiny? The answers are coming, but the journey to uncover them is filled with twists, suspense, and revelations no one saw coming. So we begin here, at the moment everything changes. When a mother decides to speak up, when the world finally hears her voice, and when the stakes for Meghan Markle, the royal family, and the public's perception of the Sussexes have never been higher. This is not just a story about royalty or fame. It is a story about love, loss, determination, and the lengths a mother will go to claim her rightful place. And as we move forward, every chapter will peel back another layer, revealing secrets, contradictions, and emotional truths that will keep you glued to every word. What if everything you thought you knew about the royal family was just the surface of a storm? Before Lilibet's story ever reached the public eye, before Meghan Markle made headlines with her interviews and Netflix deals, the palace had already been simmering with tension, secrecy, and power struggles that few outside its walls could even begin to imagine. The royal family, known for its tradition, etiquette, and careful public image, has always been a place where private lives are closely guarded. But when new blood enters the mix, outsiders, outspoken voices, and high-profile figures, the delicate balance of secrecy and protocol can collapse in ways both dramatic and devastating. The story of Lilibet cannot be fully understood without first exploring this backdrop of palace intrigue. Imagine Buckingham Palace, a place that looks serene and majestic from the outside, but inside, every corridor hums with whispers. Every tea-time conversation is calculated. Every glance, every gesture, every smile can carry hidden meaning. The walls, adorned with centuries of history, have witnessed countless private conflicts, but the Sussex's entrance brought a storm that shook the very foundation of royal expectation. For decades, the royal family followed unspoken rules. Appearances mattered more than emotions. Duty often outweighed personal happiness, and every member was expected to conform to centuries-old expectations. But when Harry and Meghan arrived on the scene, they brought with them a different energy, a desire to redefine what it meant to be royal in the modern era. This wasn't just about charity appearances or photo ops. This was about autonomy, identity, and a willingness to challenge norms. And that challenge didn't sit well with everyone. Tension began subtly at first. Not public scandals, but quiet, almost imperceptible conflicts. There were disagreements over public statements, private interactions that didn't align with protocol, and questions about boundaries. Some insiders whispered about the Duchess's ambitious nature, her desire to create her own narrative, and her inclination to step outside the traditional channels of communication. Others viewed her as a breath of fresh air, a modernizer willing to break free from outdated rules. But for some, these changes were dangerous, unpredictable, a threat to the carefully controlled image of the monarchy. It's important to understand the emotional undercurrent in this environment. Royal life is not simply about glamour or status. It carries an intense psychological weight. Each member navigates pressures few outsiders can comprehend. Expectations are rigid. Mistakes, no matter how small, can become public scandals. Privacy is nearly impossible, and the scrutiny is relentless. Against this backdrop, every decision made by Meghan and Harry carried consequences not just for themselves, but for their entire family, and, ultimately, for the youngest members, like Lilibet. Even before Lilibet's birth, the public observed flashes of tension. Meghan's interviews, her candid revelations, and her approach to media relations were groundbreaking. Some praised her honesty. Others accused her of breaking the sacred trust of the monarchy. Each new revelation sent ripples through the palace, through the media, and into the hearts of the public. People debated endlessly. Was Meghan too outspoken? Was Harry caught between loyalty to tradition and devotion to his wife? And in the middle of it all, a new life was growing. Lilibet, a child born into the eye of a storm she did not choose. But here's where the story gets more complex. Lilibet's existence, though celebrated publicly, became entangled in layers of secrecy. Decisions about her upbringing, exposure to the media, and interactions with family were debated behind closed doors. Allegedly, certain choices were made not only to protect her privacy, but also to control narratives, to ensure the public image remained intact. But controlling a narrative, as history shows, is a tricky endeavor. The tighter the grip, the greater the risk of an explosive leak. And in this case, the leak would not come from the palace staff or the tabloids. It would come from someone with a deeper, more personal connection, her real mother. During these early years, the family dynamics were already tense. Meghan and Harry navigated royal responsibilities, public appearances, and private pressures, all while facing an increasingly aggressive media environment. Paparazzi images, leaked interviews, and public speculation created a perfect storm. Every step was analyzed, every word scrutinized, every decision dissected. It's in this environment that small conflicts began to balloon into crises, and minor disagreements escalated into full-blown public scandals. And as the family struggled with internal tensions, Lilibet's position became more precarious, though very few outside the inner circle even suspected it. It's also important to recognize the human side of these conflicts. Behind the grandeur, titles, and wealth. These are real people with real emotions. The weight of expectation, coupled with personal ambition and genuine love, created a volatile mix. For Meghan, navigating this world meant balancing her desire to protect her family with the pressures of being constantly watched. For Harry, it meant reconciling loyalty to his parents with devotion to his wife and children. And for Lilibet, it meant growing up in an environment where her every smile and every move could become headline news, long before she could even understand what it meant to be famous. Now, consider the additional layer of secrecy surrounding Lilibet's mother. According to sources, she had been trying for years to maintain a connection with her daughter to ensure that her voice was not erased. This wasn't about wealth, status, or recognition, at least not in the conventional sense. It was about love, connection, and the inalienable right of a mother to be present in her child's life. And yet, she remained in the shadows, watching as decisions were made without her consent, as narratives were controlled by others, and as her daughter's story unfolded publicly. It's here that the tension reaches its first climax. Imagine the frustration of a mother observing her child's life from afar, knowing she is capable of providing support, guidance, and love, yet being systematically blocked. This is not a fictional drama. This is real life, complicated by layers of privilege, public perception, and media interference. It is a scenario that tests the limits of patience, resilience, and human endurance. And it is within this web of tension that the first seeds of the confrontation we see today were planted. Adding to the complexity are the contradictions that make this story almost impossible to untangle. On one hand, the palace and the Sussexes present an image of a loving, cohesive family striving to live life on their own terms. On the other hand, accounts from insiders and the mother suggest a narrative of control, barriers, and silenced voices. Both narratives can coexist because truth in complex family dynamics is rarely linear. People perceive reality differently, motives clash, and actions that seem protective to one party can feel obstructive to another. The result is a story that is endlessly fascinating, deeply emotional, and fraught with suspense. Every layer we uncover reveals more questions than answers. How did Meghan's approach to motherhood shape these dynamics? How did Harry's loyalty affect decisions made on behalf of the family? What role did the palace play in mediating or exacerbating tensions? And most importantly, what did all of this mean for Lilibet, whose life was being shaped by forces both seen and unseen? The answers we are about to discover are startling. They involve power struggles, emotional manipulation, and decisions that carry consequences for generations. And just when you think the storm cannot intensify, it does. Because the mother who has remained silent for so long is finally ready to speak. Her voice will pierce the carefully constructed narrative. Her revelations will expose contradictions, challenge assumptions, and force everyone, palace, media, and public alike, to reconsider everything they thought they knew. And with her emergence, the quiet tension that has existed behind palace walls will erupt into public drama of unprecedented scale. But before we reach that point, we must continue to understand the roots of this storm, the familial conflicts, the decisions that set the stage, and the early warning signs that a confrontation was inevitable. The royal family's storm, which started quietly behind closed doors, set the stage for what is now a global spectacle. It was a storm fueled by secrecy, magnified by media scrutiny, and intensified by emotional stakes too high to ignore. Every decision, every statement, every gesture contributed to the build-up. And as the world watched, unaware of the full story, the tension continued to mount, drawing us closer to the moment when silence would no longer be possible. So we begin the journey here, tracing the lineage of conflict, examining the motives, the choices, and the human emotions that brought us to the present. It is a story of love, power, betrayal, and resilience. And as the next chapter unfolds, we will see how Meghan Markle's actions, decisions, and public persona collided with the quiet determination of a mother who refused to be erased. The stage is set, the players are in motion, and the drama is about to escalate in ways that no one could have predicted. Money, power, and secrecy, three forces that often collide in the most explosive ways. And when they do, They have the power to shatter relationships, reputations, and lives. For Meghan Markle, those forces are no strangers. From the moment she entered the royal family, her every action was analyzed through the lens of wealth, privilege, and control. But what happens when money is not just a tool for comfort or influence, but a weapon in a battle over family, loyalty, and custody? That is the story we are about to uncover. A story where the stakes go far beyond bank accounts and public perception and reach straight into the heart of a mother's most profound desire, to be with her child. The public has always been fascinated with Meghan's financial dealings. Her pre-royal life included a successful acting career, personal endorsements, and investments that showcased her independence. When she married Prince Harry, the world assumed that wealth would no longer be a primary concern. After all, the royal family provides security, assets, and a lifestyle few could imagine. Yet, in the shadows, money became more than a security blanket. It became a tool of negotiation, a source of leverage, and, according to some insiders, a point of contention. Let's start with the first whispers: financial settlements, trust funds, and private arrangements that were never meant for public scrutiny. Some reports suggest that Meghan, in her effort to protect her children, considered financial solutions that would secure their comfort while maintaining control over their upbringing. On the surface, this seems logical. A mother ensuring her child is cared for. But to others, particularly those with direct knowledge of the family's past and the mother waiting in the wings, it appeared as if financial power was being wielded to block connection, to create dependency, and perhaps even to silence. The contrast between public generosity and private control creates a tension that fuels the story we are following. Consider this: money can sometimes obscure motives. When financial resources are abundant, actions that might otherwise seem altruistic can take on a different meaning. Was Meghan's financial planning meant to protect her children, or to enforce boundaries that others viewed as unfair? How does one distinguish between safeguarding and manipulation when wealth and power are involved? These are questions that have haunted royal commentators, journalists, and, most importantly, the mother who has been watching from the sidelines. The legal landscape compounds the complexity. Royal custody disputes are rarely straightforward, and when wealth, nationality, and public interest intersect, the situation becomes even more convoluted. International laws, family courts, and private agreements all come into play. In Meghan's case, the question isn't simply about who can provide the best environment for Lilibet. It's about who holds the authority to make decisions when multiple jurisdictions, interests, and public expectations collide. Every legal maneuver, every clause, every negotiation carries weight that can change the trajectory of a child's life. But beyond the technicalities, the emotional stakes are immense. Money cannot replace love, and no legal document can substitute for a mother's presence. That is precisely why the claims from Lilibet's real mother strike so powerfully. She has publicly stated, again and again, that she does not want financial compensation. Her fight is not about wealth, it is about access, acknowledgement, and connection. And yet, in a world where financial power often dictates outcomes, her refusal to negotiate on monetary terms sets up a confrontation that is as dramatic as it is unprecedented. It's a clash of priorities, and the tension is almost unbearable. Now, consider the optics. Meghan, a figure already under constant media scrutiny, faces allegations that she is using wealth to influence familial relations. Every past action, every public statement, every social media post is re-examined. Was the creation of certain funds an innocent measure of prudence, or a calculated attempt to maintain control? Critics argue, supporters defend, and the public debates fiercely. Each viewpoint adds fuel to a fire that is already blazing, and each twist leaves more questions than answers. The stakes escalate further when we consider the broader context of the Sussexes' departure from royal duties. By stepping back from traditional responsibilities, Meghan and Harry asserted independence, but with independence comes responsibility and often controversy. The public, conditioned to see royals as figures bound by duty and tradition, struggled to reconcile the image of a duchess making autonomous choices with the expectation that she would always adhere to established norms. That tension spilled into financial considerations. Who controls resources, who decides how they are spent, and who benefits from them. And behind it all, a mother watches, insisting that wealth should never be a barrier to love. There are also allegations of private negotiations that failed to resolve the conflict. Some insiders claim that attempts were made to create agreements that would appease both parties, yet the solutions never fully satisfied the mother. She reportedly rejected offers of financial settlements, viewing them as irrelevant to the core issue, her connection to Lilibet. This rejection, however, was not universally understood. Some in Meghan's circle may have interpreted it as a challenge or even a threat, further complicating already tense relations. In this way, money, intended as a tool of resolution, became a symbol of division, highlighting the emotional and moral stakes in stark relief. The public reaction is another critical layer. In today's world, every high-profile dispute is scrutinized through social media, news cycles, and online speculation. Meghan's financial decisions have been dissected by journalists, bloggers, and commenters alike. Some argue that her wealth gives her unfair leverage. Others insist that she is merely exercising rights afforded to her as a mother and public figure. Yet everyone agrees on one thing. The financial dimension of this story cannot be ignored because it intersects so profoundly with questions of morality, power, and family loyalty. Even within the royal family, financial matters are rarely simple. The Sussexes' finances, including personal income, inheritance, and earnings from media deals, exist within a complex ecosystem of obligations, expectations, and scrutiny. Any attempt to make private arrangements touches not only the immediate family, but also the broader institution. That is why these disputes over money, legal authority, and custody are not just private matters. They are public spectacles, capable of influencing reputation, legacy, and perception for decades. And yet, amidst all this complexity, one truth stands out. For Lilibet's real mother, money is irrelevant. She has made this clear repeatedly, insisting that her goal is singular, to be reunited with her daughter. This insistence reframes the entire conflict. What appears to outsiders as a struggle over wealth is, at its core, a struggle for human connection, for recognition, for love that cannot be bought or sold. It is a reminder that even in a world dominated by power and privilege, the most profound battles are often those that cannot be measured in currency. But here is the twist. Money has a way of complicating emotional truths. Offers, settlements, or legal incentives intended to resolve conflict can inadvertently create new tension. When the stakes involve both wealth and a child's well-being, every gesture is scrutinized, every statement interpreted, every motive questioned. For Meghan, the challenge is navigating these dual pressures, protecting her family while responding to a mother who refuses to be sidelined, all under the intense gaze of a global audience. And for Lilibet's mother, the challenge is equally daunting, asserting her maternal rights in a system where wealth and influence are powerful tools, while staying true to her principles. The result is a drama that transcends ordinary disputes. It is a story where the intersection of finance, law, and family creates a tension so high that it threatens to explode at any moment. And indeed, in recent weeks, we have seen that explosion begin to take shape. Public statements, legal filings, and media leaks have set the stage for a confrontation that promises to be both unprecedented and emotionally charged. The world is watching, waiting to see how this battle will unfold and what it will mean for everyone involved. As the legal and financial threads intertwine, so too do the emotional ones. Every decision carries consequences not only for the adults, but for Lilibet herself, whose childhood is being shaped by forces beyond her control. Every negotiation, every settlement, every decision about wealth and authority ripples outward, impacting relationships, public perception, and ultimately, the very essence of family. And while the mother insists she does not care about money, her voice has catalyzed a movement of accountability, drawing attention to questions that few were willing to ask. Can love truly be separated from power? Can a mother be silenced when all she wants is her child? And what happens when those in power fail to recognize the most basic human needs? This chapter, then, is not just about dollars, documents, or deals. It is about human emotion entangled with social expectation, about the collision of privilege with principle, and about the stakes that emerge when a mother fights for her child in a world that often measures value in ways that have nothing to do with love. Meghan Markle's financial and legal battles are a window into this collision, revealing the pressures, contradictions, and moral dilemmas that shape one of the most compelling stories of our time. And as we move forward, we will see how these financial and legal tensions set the stage for the real explosion. The moment when Lilibet's mother speaks, the world reacts, and the stakes are raised to levels that no one could have imagined. You think you know the story of a royal child. Cute photos, smiling in the garden, waving at the cameras. But the reality behind the public image of Lilibet is far more complex, hidden beneath layers of secrecy, protocol, and decisions made by adults in positions of power. Imagine being born into a life under constant observation, where every step you take, every gesture you make, becomes a matter of public fascination. Now imagine that behind the smiles and carefully staged photographs, your personal history is the subject of secrecy, speculation, and, according to some claims, deliberate obfuscation. That is the story of Lilibet, the child at the center of one of the most explosive family dramas in modern royal history. From the moment of her birth, Lilibet's life was framed by public attention and palace tradition. Every detail, her name, her appearance, her milestones, was closely managed. The world knows her as a figure of innocence and charm, the youngest member of a high-profile family, carried into the media's gaze before she could even walk. But beneath the carefully curated public image, questions lingered. Who is really in charge of shaping her story? Who decides what the public sees, and what remains hidden? And what happens when those choices clash with the interests and rights of someone outside the immediate family, someone claiming to be her real mother? Public appearances were always precise, choreographed to perfection. Lilibet smiled, waved, and engaged in ways that made the monarchy proud. The public narrative emphasized joy, tradition, and familial unity. Yet, while cameras captured these moments, insiders hint at a different reality behind closed doors. Decisions about schooling, exposure to media, and even the nuances of affection were carefully navigated. Every parent wants the best for their child, but when public scrutiny meets private desire, choices become fraught with pressure and risk. For Lilibet, these decisions meant growing up in a world where childhood was both celebrated and constrained, where love was mediated through protocol, and where access to family could be limited by invisible boundaries. And then there's the other side of the story, the mother who claims she has been denied a meaningful role in her child's life. According to sources, she observed Lilibet from afar, making careful calculations about when and how to assert herself. She watched as milestones passed, birthdays celebrated, and public appearances made. The frustration, heartbreak, and helplessness she felt are difficult to overstate. How do you reconcile the joy of seeing your child thrive with the anguish of being kept at a distance? How do you act when your attempts to engage are met with barriers, silence, or outright resistance? For Lilibet's mother, these questions have been a constant shadow in her life, shaping her emotions and decisions, and ultimately propelling her to speak out. It's also important to understand the complexity of growing up as a child in the public eye. Lilibet has been thrust into a unique situation, one foot in the private world of family and the other in a spotlight that few children ever experience. Childhood, with its play, learning, and exploration, becomes entangled with media appearances, public expectations, and scrutiny that can feel relentless. Every smile can be dissected, every gesture interpreted. This dual existence, part intimate, part performative, can create profound emotional strain. For a child, the line between reality and expectation can blur in ways that are difficult for adults to even imagine. While the public narrative portrays a life of care, attention, and protection, insiders suggest that there are tensions and contradictions beneath the surface. Some decisions, such as limiting certain interactions or carefully controlling exposure, may be presented as protective measures. But from the perspective of Lilibet's mother, these same decisions have been interpreted as obstacles, as attempts to block contact and maintain control over the child's story. The contrast between perception and reality is stark, creating a tension that runs through every chapter of this narrative. Consider the impact of media exposure on a child like Lilibet. The fascination with royal children is intense. Photos are published, headlines written, and every milestone analyzed. While the public sees innocence and charm, the child may experience an entirely different reality. The pressure to perform, the awareness of being watched, and the lack of control over personal information can create emotional strain. And when private truths, such as the claims of a mother outside the immediate family, enter the equation, the stakes become even higher. The child's sense of identity, belonging, and security can be challenged in ways that are difficult for adults to fully comprehend. Even within the royal family, navigating these dynamics is challenging. Parents must balance public image, protocol, and personal values, all while ensuring the emotional well-being of the child. Meghan and Harry face these challenges while also managing their own transitions, stepping back from royal duties, and negotiating a new public identity. Decisions that may have seemed straightforward, such as schooling choices, living arrangements, or media exposure, were in reality loaded with consequences, both public and private. For Lilibet, the impact of these decisions is profound, shaping the environment in which she grows, learns, and forms her earliest memories. Then there is the added tension of secrecy and suppression. Lilibet's mother alleges that her access to her child has been restricted, that attempts to establish contact were thwarted or ignored, and that she has been deliberately kept on the margins of her daughter's life. While these claims remain contested, the emotional resonance is undeniable. Any mother in such a position would feel a complex mixture of sorrow, frustration, and determination. And it is precisely this determination, simmering for years, that has now propelled her into the public eye, demanding recognition and action. The contrast between Lilibet's public and private lives is further complicated by the roles of caregivers, family friends, and palace staff. Each person involved plays a part in shaping the child's daily experience. Choices about routines, education, and exposure are filtered through multiple perspectives, often creating conflicting priorities. For the mother, who is outside the immediate circle of control, these decisions represent both frustration and exclusion. And as the years have passed, the sense of urgency has grown. Every day that passes without meaningful contact reinforces the emotional weight of the situation. Audience, consider this. How would you feel if you were a mother watching your child grow from a distance, knowing that each smile, each milestone, and each memory is happening without your presence? How would you navigate a world where power, wealth, and public scrutiny create obstacles that cannot easily be overcome? These questions are not rhetorical. They form the emotional backbone of this story, framing every claim, every statement, and every action that has followed. Despite the layers of complexity, there is a thread of hope running through Lilibet's story. The bond between mother and child is resilient, enduring, and deeply human. Even when circumstances create distance, the desire for connection persists. And it is this desire that has now become the catalyst for public revelation. Lilibet's mother is no longer willing to remain silent, no longer willing to accept invisibility. Her voice, once quiet, is now central to the unfolding drama, bringing the private struggles of childhood, parenthood, and identity into the public domain. This chapter, then, is a critical lens into the duality of Lilibet's life, a life caught between the public spectacle of royalty and the private realities of family, love, and exclusion. It sets the stage for the next wave of revelations, where the stakes are emotional, legal, and profoundly human. As we move forward, the story will delve deeper into the mother's emergence, the challenges she faces, and the confrontation that is reshaping perceptions of Meghan, Harry, and the family as a whole. And just when the audience thinks they understand the contours of this story, the mother steps forward, breaking years of silence and exposing truths that have been carefully hidden. The lines between public narrative and private reality blur, creating tension, suspense, and emotional stakes that continue to climb. What she reveals next will challenge assumptions, provoke outrage, and force the world to reconsider what family, love, and maternal rights truly mean in this extraordinary situation. What if the person you've been waiting for your entire life finally speaks, but the world isn't ready to hear? For years, the mother of Lilibet, the young girl at the center of one of the most explosive royal dramas, remained silent. Not because she didn't care, but because the walls of wealth, power, and protocol kept her at a distance. Watching from the shadows, she observed her daughter's milestones, her public appearances, and the unfolding narrative crafted by others. And all the while, a quiet determination built inside her. One day, the world would hear her voice. That day has finally arrived. Lilibet's mother has stepped into the spotlight, breaking years of silence. Her words are measured, deliberate, and powerful. She doesn't speak for fame or fortune. She doesn't seek validation or revenge. She speaks for one reason only: to claim her right to be a mother. In her first public statement, she said, "I just want my daughter back. I don't want your money. I want her. I want to be her mother." The simplicity of the statement belies the profound weight behind it. It is a demand, a plea, and a declaration all at once, and it has sent shockwaves through social media, newsrooms, and palace walls alike. The timing of her emergence is critical. Meghan Markle, already facing scrutiny over her financial dealings, legal battles, and public persona, is now confronted with a human story that cannot be ignored. For years, the narrative has centered on autonomy, media strategy, and celebrity. What did she reveal first? The mother spoke of years of watching, waiting, and trying to navigate barriers that prevented meaningful connection. She described moments of heartbreak, birthdays she couldn't attend, milestones she could only hear about secondhand, and the slow, painful realization that her child was being raised in a world carefully curated by others. The words are striking not just because of their content, but because of the emotion behind them. Every syllable carries longing, frustration, and resolve. But here's where the drama escalates. Her emergence challenges not just public perception, but the very control Meghan and Harry have maintained over the narrative. For the Sussexes, who have worked for years to craft an image of family, independence, and privacy, this revelation is a storm they may not have anticipated. Suddenly, the world's attention shifts from Netflix deals, interviews, and social media posts to something far more human: a mother fighting for access to her child. The optics are powerful. The public is forced to reconcile admiration for Meghan with empathy for a woman who has been kept at arm's length from her own daughter. The mother also addressed misconceptions head-on. In interviews, she insisted that she has never sought to profit from the situation, nor has she attempted to leverage it for fame. "This isn't about money," she emphasized repeatedly. "I don't want your deals with media companies, your wealth. I just want my daughter. Nothing else matters." The clarity and moral weight of her statement added to the tension. It paints a picture of a battle that is not transactional, it is existential. Yet the stakes extend beyond emotion. With her voice finally heard, questions arise about legal and practical implications. Could her emergence trigger a custody challenge? Could courts, international laws, or private agreements be affected by the publicity of her statements? Every move she makes now has the potential to ripple through complex systems of law, media, and public opinion. And for Meghan, whose life is already under relentless scrutiny, these developments are far from simple to navigate. But what makes her story even more compelling is the strategic patience she exercised before speaking. This was not an impulsive move. For years, she collected information, built awareness, and observed the environment around her daughter. She studied the media, the palace's responses, and the public's tendencies. When she finally chose to speak, it was calculated for maximum impact, not out of malice, but out of necessity. The timing, delivery, and content of her statements were designed to ensure that her voice could no longer be ignored. Her revelations also shed light on previously unseen aspects of Lilibet's upbringing. She described restrictions on visits, limitations on personal contact, and moments when her attempts at connection were thwarted by intermediaries or misunderstood intentions. These accounts paint a picture of emotional isolation, not in the sense of neglect, but in the sense of separation from the one person whose presence is irreplaceable: her mother. The conflict between love and access, affection and control, is a theme that runs through the story like a current, powerful and unrelenting. And then comes the public reaction, which has been as explosive as the revelations themselves. Social media erupted with comments ranging from outrage to empathy. News outlets ran feature stories, dissecting every word, every implication. Royal commentators debated endlessly. What responsibility does Meghan have? How should Harry respond? What legal rights does the mother possess? And how might this change the trajectory of Lilibet's life? The debate spans continents, social classes, and political lines, but the heart of the matter remains singular: a mother fighting to reclaim her relationship with her child. Yet amidst the drama, contradictions abound. Some sources close to the Sussexes argue that Meghan has always acted in her daughter's best interest, ensuring her privacy, safety, and well-being. Others close to the mother claim that barriers were deliberately created to prevent contact and maintain control over the child's narrative. The truth, as always, is layered, complex, and difficult to fully discern. What is undeniable, however, is the emotional resonance. The pain, determination, and courage of a mother who refused to remain silent. Her public emergence also introduces tension in the broader conversation about celebrity, power, and accountability. When wealth and influence intersect with family disputes, the outcomes can feel abstract, transactional, or unfair. But this story, stripped of its glittering royal backdrop, is painfully human. It reminds audiences that no amount of money, media presence, or strategic control can replace the emotional necessity of a mother's connection to her child. That reality resonates far beyond royal families, reaching anyone who has experienced separation, longing, or obstacles to personal relationships. And then there's the cliffhanger, the piece that ensures audiences remain riveted. While she has spoken, her voice alone has not resolved the conflict. Meghan's next moves, Harry's response, and the actions of advisors and legal teams remain unknown. The mother has opened a door, revealed the stakes, and challenged the status quo, but what happens next is uncertain, unpredictable, and potentially explosive. Every viewer is left asking, how will Meghan respond? Will reconciliation be possible? Or will this spark a confrontation that shakes the foundations of public perception and family relationships alike? The chapter closes on this tension. A mother finally speaking, her words cutting through years of secrecy and a world watching in suspense. The stakes could not be higher. The next developments promise revelations, confrontations, and decisions that will reverberate far beyond the palace walls. The moment Lilibet's mother spoke, the world shifted. It wasn't just a statement. It was a spark thrown into a powder keg. Within hours, the media erupted, and social media became a battleground. Headlines screamed across the internet. "I want my daughter back." Royal drama intensifies. Meghan Markle in hot water. Every news outlet, influencer, and commentator tried to dissect, interpret, and sensationalize the words of a woman who had waited years for this moment. But what made the story so combustible was not simply the words. It was the emotional resonance, the raw human drama, and the way it pierced the carefully curated image of the Sussexes. Social media, in particular, exploded in real time. Twitter threads spun out of control, hashtags trended worldwide, and fan communities erupted into heated debate. On one side were Meghan's defenders, insisting she had acted in the best interests of her daughter, providing protection, privacy, and stability in a world that is relentless. On the other side were those expressing deep sympathy for Lilibet's mother, viewing her story as a fight for basic maternal rights. Memes, clips from interviews, and screenshots flooded feeds, making the story feel immediate, intimate, and inescapable. The rapid spread of information and misinformation created a swirl of confusion and tension, keeping audiences hooked at every turn. Traditional media played a crucial role as well. Newspapers, television networks, and online platforms ran continuous updates, analyzing every word of the mother's statements, every public appearance, and every potential response from Meghan and Harry. Headlines alternated between outrage and empathy, drawing viewers and readers into a narrative that was part royal scandal, part human interest story, and part courtroom drama waiting to happen. Talk shows and commentary panels dissected the implications. What legal avenues could the mother pursue? How would this affect Meghan's reputation, her relationship with Harry, and the global perception of the royal family? The emotional component cannot be overstated. For the public, this story tapped into universal themes: parental love, injustice, and the struggle for connection. People could relate to the heartbreak of separation, the frustration of being unheard, and the desire to protect a child. These emotions, amplified by the high-profile nature of the situation, created a perfect storm of engagement. Audiences were compelled not only to follow the story but to participate in it, sharing opinions, crafting narratives, and speculating about what might happen next. At the same time, the story exposed the complex relationship between celebrity and accountability. Meghan Markle, already a figure under constant scrutiny, found her financial, legal, and personal decisions dissected anew. Every past interview, every social media post, every public appearance was re-examined for hints, contradictions, or evidence. Analysts debated her intentions, ethics, and priorities, while fans debated morality, fairness, and justice. The narrative was no longer just about royal protocol. It was about human behavior under extraordinary circumstances, magnified by fame, wealth, and power. The global reach of this reaction was unprecedented. International news outlets covered the story from London to New York to Sydney. Social media transcended borders, with hashtags trending simultaneously across continents. Fans, critics, and casual observers alike weighed in, creating a web of engagement that seemed to grow exponentially by the hour. The rapid spread of information and speculation made it impossible for any party to fully control the narrative. Each day brought new angles, new revelations, and new conflicts, keeping the story alive and the public captivated. Among the reactions were those that challenged perceptions and assumptions. Some commentators pointed out the irony of a wealthy, high-profile figure being challenged by someone with no financial leverage. Others emphasized the moral weight of the mother's statements, highlighting the universal human desire for connection over material gain. These perspectives created tension, forcing audiences to confront difficult questions about power, privilege, and ethics. The debates were not just about royal drama. They were about values, empathy, and the ways in which society judges actions based on status and perception. The media also highlighted contradictions that fueled curiosity. Meghan's efforts to control public narratives clashed with the mother's refusal to be silenced. Every statement from the palace, every strategic public appearance by the Sussexes, was now scrutinized for evidence of guilt, manipulation, or sincerity. In essence, the emergence of Lilibet's mother disrupted the delicate balance that had previously existed, creating a volatile environment where every action had consequences, every word mattered, and every moment could become a headline. Then there were the social media controversies. Arguments between fans, celebrities weighing in, and viral posts creating momentum that the traditional media could not ignore. Memes juxtaposed photos of Lilibet with quotes from her mother. Video clips from Meghan's interviews were recirculated with commentary. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube became platforms where audiences created their own narratives, contributing to the viral nature of the story. Engagement metrics skyrocketed, and the conversation was relentless. People didn't just follow the story, they lived it, shared it, and argued about it, day and night. Yet, the mother's voice remained a steady, emotional anchor amid the chaos. While media narratives and social media frenzy often focused on scandal, speculation, and judgment, her message was simple and clear. Her fight is about love, not money, recognition, or revenge. This clarity cut through the noise, forcing audiences to confront the human dimension behind the headlines. Even as opinions clashed and interpretations varied, the emotional truth of a mother fighting for her daughter resonated universally, and the ripple effects extended beyond the immediate family. Royal commentators, legal analysts, and public figures weighed in, each bringing their own perspective, expertise, or agenda. Every new commentary added complexity, expanded the conversation, and intensified the stakes. The story became not just about Meghan, Harry, or Lilibet, but about societal expectations, media ethics, and the intersection of family, fame, and justice. Audiences were compelled to watch, read, and engage, because the implications felt both personal and universal. In addition, the global reaction exposed tensions between public perception and private reality. The carefully constructed image of the Sussexes as modern, independent, and media savvy was now being challenged by a narrative rooted in personal relationships, emotional longing, and moral claims. For Meghan, this represented not just a reputational challenge, but a human one, a confrontation with the limits of public control and the power of a personal, emotional voice. And just when it seemed the story had reached its peak, the media revealed new angles, interviews, and statements from insiders that added layers of suspense and unpredictability. Every revelation, every quote, every report kept the public on edge, creating a rhythm of tension that propelled engagement. Audiences were left waiting for the next chapter, the next confrontation, the next emotional pivot that would redefine the narrative once again. This chapter closes with the undeniable fact. The public's reaction is as much a part of the story as the events themselves. The viral nature of social media, the relentless scrutiny of traditional media, and the global fascination with royalty combined to create an ecosystem where tension, emotion, and curiosity are constantly renewed. And the next developments, the legal maneuvers, the private confrontations, and the emotional reckoning, promise to escalate the drama even further. The battle over Lillibet is no longer just emotional or public, it is legal. Behind the headlines, the statements, and the viral posts lies a complex web of legal frameworks, custody rights, and jurisdictional challenges. When a mother claims access to her child, and that child resides in a world of wealth, influence, and media scrutiny, the law becomes both shield and sword. Every document, every filing, and every clause carries immense weight. And in this case, the stakes are not just about money or custody. They are about identity, connection, and the fundamental human right to parent one's child. The first question anyone asks in situations like this is simple. What rights does Lilibet's mother have? Under international law, parental rights are generally clear, but complications arise when wealth, residency, and public status intersect. Meghan Markle, residing with Lilibet outside of the traditional royal environment, and having stepped back from formal royal duties, introduces layers of jurisdictional complexity. Courts must consider not only biological relationships, but also the practical realities of care, living arrangements, and the child's welfare. And while some legal scholars argue that these challenges are surmountable, others note that navigating a high-profile case with global attention is far from straightforward. Custody battles are rarely linear, and this one is no exception. At the heart of the dispute is a mother's insistence on access and recognition versus the rights of a parent managing the child's environment, safety, and public exposure. Legal experts highlight the difficulty of balancing these interests. How does a court weigh emotional bonds against stability, privacy, and protection from public scrutiny? What happens when one parent holds immense financial resources and influence, and the other has little beyond moral and legal claim? These questions are not rhetorical. They define the strategy, the filings, and the arguments that will shape the outcome. The documents already leaked to the press offer tantalizing glimpses into the complexity of the case. Confidential agreements, correspondence, and legal filings hint at negotiations, proposed settlements, and contested clauses. Some reports suggest that initial attempts were made to offer access in a controlled, mediated environment, but these proposals were rejected by the mother, who insisted that access should not be conditional or limited. Here, emotion intersects with law. Legal solutions are insufficient without addressing the human need for connection, and human determination can challenge the rigidity of legal systems. One of the most challenging aspects of the case is the role of public perception. In ordinary custody disputes, courts focus on welfare, stability, and the best interests of the child. In this instance, however, every filing, hearing, and statement is observed by millions. Media coverage, social media reactions, and global scrutiny create pressures that influence not just public opinion, but potentially legal strategy. Lawyers must consider optics as much as facts, anticipating leaks, statements, and reactions that could complicate proceedings. Every move is a chess game played on multiple boards simultaneously: legal, emotional, and public. And then there is the question of jurisdiction. Lilibet's residence, the nationality of the parents, and international considerations introduce layers of complexity. Cross-border family law cases are notoriously difficult, often requiring negotiation between legal systems, recognition of documents, and adherence to conventions such as the Hague Convention on Child Abduction. In this case, the intersection of international law and high-profile media scrutiny creates a situation in which each action carries consequences far beyond the courtroom. Every legal strategy must account for the possibility of leaks, public outrage, and global debate. The mother's position, though morally compelling, faces practical challenges. Courts will evaluate her ability to provide stability, her relationship with the child, and the potential disruption her involvement could create. Advocates argue that access should be granted based on biological and emotional connection, while critics warn that sudden introduction or aggressive public pressure could harm the child. The tension between idealized justice and pragmatic care underscores every decision, every filing, and every statement made by legal representatives on both sides. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle's legal team is tasked with protecting both her privacy and her daughter's well-being. Protective measures, such as supervised visits, controlled exposure, and confidentiality agreements, are likely under consideration. At the same time, they must prepare for public backlash, potential international legal challenges, and the moral narrative presented by the mother's statements. This creates a delicate balancing act. Maintaining control without appearing callous, defending legal rights without seeming indifferent to a mother's emotional claims, and navigating both law and reputation simultaneously. The battle also raises questions about precedent. Few cases involve a child of such high public visibility, with parental figures who are not only wealthy, but globally recognized. Any decision could influence not only this situation, but also how the media, the public, and courts handle future disputes involving high-profile families. The stakes are unprecedented. Personal, legal, and societal consequences intertwine in ways that amplify tension and uncertainty. Legal maneuvers are not limited to custody. They also touch on communication, public statements, and media engagement. Leaks